Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. There you are. For those watching and listening in, there's all sorts of things going on in the background. Okay, members, we're back. We're back. You'll be thrilled to know that the running order slightly changed.
I'm reading deputation on the next one, but also apologies that I have to leave after that as well. It's run a little bit more than I thought it would today, but I appreciate the very first.
Do you make him sing 10 green bottles then as punishment?
I will do that next time.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're going to do Oriel Road next, members. For those who don't know, sorry, Mary, we can squarely blame Councillor Simpson, who needs to do this and go. And he's off again, off to the back of the room. Okay. Ian.
94 Oriel Road. This is an HMO application, a change of use from a use class C to a dual use, so an alternate use class C3 or C4. There is the property, middle of the road, as you can see there, it looks like. This would be the third HMO out of 67 properties in the relevant search area, so a 4.4% mix below your 10% requirement. That is the existing floor plans. That is the proposed, as you can see, a 3-metre rear extension and a substantive series of alterations to the roof to create the additional floor space proposed. All of those rooms meet your minimum space standards. Members will note that on that right-hand image, the rooms in the space are a cinema room with a large storage cupboard and a study with a large storage cupboard. Both of those cupboards are larger than is necessary to be an ensuite bathroom. I cannot explain why an applicant would choose to do that, where there is quite clearly an intent to convert those to flats in the future. However, you are assessing the application before you, and that application is for a 6-bed C4 HMO, not the 8-bed, which one could be forgiven for presuming we will get to. The standard sizes for communal space, of course, are exactly the same for 8-bed, so it would meet those guidance and an application had been made. But it hasn't. We have the application before us. As I say, it meets all of your space standards and guidance and is well below the 10% threshold. And consequently, with no other concerns identified as officers justifying refusal, planning permission is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. I always feel like I'm always reading about these roads non-stop. Like many residents, we are disappointed by the amount of HMOs being requested in the area. It feels almost like a crusade without any consideration for residents' concerns, and there are many. Parking, ASB and crime, and I know that it was mentioned about weaponising, kind of the fact that crime, but there was a cannabis farm that actually was shut down not too long ago, which was an ASB, which was an HMO not too far away from here. So perception is very important when it comes to HMOs. Loss of light to the neighbour's property should be considered here from this extension. Seems to be I'm not having much luck on that one, but I think, we've got to consider, these buildings being brought out and stopping neighbours' lights. And what we consider as a normal HMO are becoming more than HMOs. They're becoming super HMOs now, which is another issue. I unfortunately have very little hope that the study and the cinema room will stay as one. Furburn Road originally had a lounge, Northern Parade had a lounge. I'm not normally a betting man, but I would have a pun that this application comes around again in 6 months, requesting it to be a sui generis and therefore becoming a super HMO. We must be seen as a laughingstock that we allow it to happen time and time again. If this does go through, I'd recommend the committee to add the condition that it stays as 6 bedrooms and allow the tenants who live there to at least have a life when home outside their bedroom. The idea of study and cinema is great, but will it fulfil it in its promise? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Councillor Hunt might be responding to your comment about laughingstock. I saw you scribbling something down. Okay, Mr. Hill.
Apologies, I just missed the start of this. I assume this 170 Chichester Road, is that right?
Oh, you weren't here. No,
No,
it's Oriel.
Fine, cool. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to provide my deputation today. My business has converted and operates a significant number of well-managed HMOs within the city, and the sympathetic conversion of HMOs is our primary business. Building regulations have been approved for this property, and they've been acknowledged by building control. As a business and as individuals, we're extremely passionate about providing high-quality living accommodation for the people of this city. Looking at the statistics of this city, you'll notice, if you do have a look at that for the last 19 years, this city has expanded year on year in terms of its population. We're the second most densely populated city in the country outside of Luton, which is number one. Our average age of a person in the city is 34. Consequently, the average age of a person purchasing a house is 34, if you have a look at national statistics. All of the works to this property are being carried out under permitted development or prior approval, and the majority of the works will actually be starting this week. I believe that this Council and Planning Committee should look to encourage the ownership and effective management of a compliant and desirable HMO so that this city can thrive. One of the nuances of the planning process is, I agree there are some rubbish HMOs in this city. There's some terrible ones, but they're not the ones you ever hear about, because ultimately they're not the ones that are being expanded. They're not the ones that come to the committee. Terrible, 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 I guess, example. But ultimately, when you look at the HMO database, there's currently 4,322 HMOs on that list. The way I view it is, every single HMO, even if the number of tenants doesn't change and we're significantly below the maximum percentage, if you look at the percentage is maximum 10%, and if you generalised it across the city, there's about 120,000 homes, so theoretically we'd have about 12,000 HMOs. Actually it would be slightly higher because the number of HMOs near the university is well in excess of 10%, so actually because of the 50 metre rule, we could probably get to like 14,000 HMOs. We're only at 4,300 at the moment. The way I view it is, every single HMO that I do, which will be one of the best in the city, goes to the top rung of the ladder. It's super desirable and people really do want to live there, which is why we have 100% occupancy. Every single one I do there, even if, because of supply and demand and the fact that it's not profitable to have an empty HMO, one of the worst HMOs would fall off the bottom rung of the ladder. The point being is, we often hear how, there's more HMOs, but we don't make the consideration of the fact that there's an awful lot of 3-bedroom houses that have had no changes whatsoever made to them that still technically count as HMOs. So many of them go undetected to become family houses again. I guess I've been trying to think of a suitable example of this in everyday life, but if you took it as a restaurant and you said like the different types of houses are the starters, mains and desserts, ultimately, I don't know which one you'd count an HMO as, but ultimately what I'm saying is you count the number of meals you give out, you count the number of starters that go out, the number of mains that go out, the number of desserts that go out, but if you don't have a system for counting the number of plates that you extract back afterwards, then those empty plates that are left on the table not being eaten or when they finish being eaten, they are the houses that were HMOs that are now back into circulation as family houses. And because there's no method for capturing those properties, ultimately that is, I believe, the only major inaccuracy in the data. So my point being is, there's an awful lot of HMOs we currently count that aren't actually HMOs anymore. As raised by Carrie-Anne on a very regular basis, HMO licensing and HMO planning legislation in Portsmouth is already some of the strongest in the country, and particularly in the locality. Without taking up my whole 6 minutes on this, the HMO database was commenced in 2011. I think it's pretty accurate, and there's a significant number of HMOs being sold and converted back into family homes. In fact, this morning I've just done a quick search on Rightmove. There are currently over 70 3-bedroom houses in North End currently available in the locality of Oriel Road for rent as a family house. There's 16 rooms. So everybody that constantly says, oh, we're taking away family houses, they aren't there, etc., etc., there's significantly more family houses than there are rooms actually available on Rightmove. In fact, if you look at that, the oldest room available is from this month, the 9th of October. The oldest house is from back in August. So the point being is that would indicate that because of Rightmove, the most popular website for finding a home, there's a significantly quicker changeover in rooms, which would actually tell you that the demand for the rooms is really high. Now, one of the other points, we use a DAB tank, which is effectively a water storage tank to ensure constant water pressure within the property without affecting neighbouring properties. We also use a stored hot water tank to ensure constant hot water for all tenants. There's a process to ensure that this is fully sanitised prior to occupation. We have a specialist ALA qualified letting agency who look after the tenants. We use a 24-hour-a-day reporting system for communication and management issues. We currently have 100% occupancy of existing properties. Bike storage provision is always something you address and is comply with within our properties. Waste management, we provide 2 larger waste and 2 larger recycling bins, 4 bins in total, so we can ensure there's adequate storage. This property has a forecourt you can put them in. We also have a cleaner on a weekly basis who not only checks the cleanliness and cleans the property, but also checks on the welfare of the tenants. We hold a waste carrier's license as a company so that if there were any such overspill of waste, such as when people were moving in or etc., we can quickly remove it effectively. We upgrade all of the soil stacks and waste pipework within the property and its boundary, and we also jet all of the drains before we hand over the property, so there can't be any issues of any problems with waste. The council's own transport expert has, which Robert Neve has stated in his consultee reply, given the small scale of development, I'm satisfied the proposal would not have a material impact on the function of the local highway network. I think it's really important we remember HMO tenants are also part of our community. It disappoints me that residents and, on occasions, councillors forget that this is the case.
Okay, right, Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much.
We've had this conversation before. Our idea of 6 minutes is different.
Well, I did time it. So.
Well, I've got 7 minutes.
Thank you very much.
We really do need to give to 6 minutes in future, if you're going to come back. My observation is, if you're going to put yourself forward as an exemplar, why are you here with a draft application including a cinema room and a study? Right, that's...
If that's a genuine question or response to, ultimately that's very sadly a nuance of the planning system, which is that all of the people that do our HMOs, and let's not forget I've been to 18 of the last, I think 18 of the last 20 of these meetings, so we do it on a regular basis. Unfortunately, if you look at the average time to decide a C3 to C4 application, it could probably be measured in weeks or months. Look at the average time to decide a sui generis application, it will be decided in months, if not years. So the point being is it actually harms the applicant, the owner of the property, it harms the city, it harms the tenants if we wait and go directly for sui generis. And I can see him shaking his head, but that is from historical data. I do take it into account that now that there has been significant improvements made and that actually a lot of our applications we are doing directly as sui generis moving forwards, but it's a bit like the game show, we have to bank questions and answers.
Okay, right. But 6 minutes, please, because, you know, that's how we do things. Okay, members, questions. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, forgive me, please forgive me if I didn't hear. But on page 136, Mr. Maguire, because we are on 170 Chichester Road, aren't we? No, I thought so.
Oriel,
sorry.
Oriel.
I beg your
To
pardon.
enable Councillor Simpson to give his deputation. Also, Councillor Simpson, by the way, I don't know, I should have had a coffee or something in the break. The we you were referring to as a laughing stock, not the committee, I hope. Members, questions?
Could you just give me the page number for Oriel Road as I'm scanning through?
Yes,
You've
of
got it in
course.
front of you.
157.
157.
157.
Agenda item 11.
Yeah, I did read it yesterday.
Okay.
Just want to get it in front of me. All right.
All right, you there? Okay. Any questions, members? Comments?
Yeah, I hear everything Councillor Simpson says, and I know residents. As I say, and Mr. Hill talks about it. It's the demonisation of the business of HMOs, the market, whatever. And people they do get worried about them. And when councillors come along and talk about things, I mean, I did hear Councillor Simpson mention something, it was a cannabis or whatever. But in Esselmont Road, about 4, 5, 6 years back, the police raided Esselmont Road and they shut down 2 brothels, and those are ordinary homes. So the point is not really much difference between you know, the behaviour of people in C3 dwelling houses and HMOs. And Mr Hill is right, it's about pushing up the standards all of the time. And we know full well that the Portsmouth Landlords Association, as Mr Hill points out, have been advising. Are we on questions or comments? Thank you, Chair. Have been advising people with the smaller HMOs to get rid of them, and we do see them. And it's a really interesting point that he raises, and I don't know how we'll be able to do this, but to understand how many of those former HMOs are coming back into the market, whatever into the housing market as dwellings. That would be a really interesting thing to understand, but I'm not sure we've got the resources to do that, quite honestly. But on this, it's very difficult to see what we could do to say no. We want to encourage these higher standards, and I must point out to people that we have to understand the reason HMOs are there is A, they've been designated as such in use classes nowadays, so they can be identified much more easily than when people just moved in together. We see so many TV programs about people living together, but nowadays they're designated as HMOs, so they're easy to see. And secondly, government after government after government of all colours, as Councillor Gerald Vernon-Jackson said, have failed to build houses. And therefore young people don't have anywhere to live. And Mr Hill gave us some really interesting statistics just now, which I take at face value. So people need somewhere to live. HMOs do provide this form of accommodation that people can afford to live. I wish it weren't so. I wish people could just have their own homes like they used to do, you know, and have the aspiration of buying their own home when they're younger, like I did, like many of us here have done. It's just not fair, and this is the way that is gone, and it's symptomatic of a failure of government policy year after decade. I must move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Members, I'm happy to second the officer's report, including the conditions. Is there anything else? Okay, those in favour, please raise your hand.
Seven votes in favour, unanimous approval of the officer's recommendation.
Chairman,
Thank you,
with
Kieran.
apologies, noticing Councillor Simpson is leaving and we've lost a few. Did want to remind members, so to remind Councillor Simpson as he walks out, about the workshop this afternoon on HMO policy at 5 o'clock. There's been a number of concerns raised by residents, we're fully aware of that. This is your chance, and one of your last chances, to influence the drafting of that policy. So Chief Executive's Conference Room, 5 o'clock, all member workshop, please do come and join us.
Thank you for that timely reminder, Ian. You'll be pleased to know we reached Dersingham Road. Close. I wasn't aware there were any deputations when I arrived this morning, by the way. There you are. Okay.
Okay, another HMO, change of use from a existing use class C3 to a flexible use between use class C3 and C4. Slightly unusual layouts of what we usually see for these sorts of applications. So around that open space, which you can see Dersingham Close there for the change of use. This is an area where it will be the second HMO within the 50-metre circle. It's the second in quite close proximity. There's one 3 doors down, but in the wider area, certainly far fewer, which is how you get to the 6.06% mix, which is obviously within the 10% allowed in terms of mixed and balanced communities. There's significantly less physical alteration to this scheme. i.e. pretty much none compared to others that we've seen. They are the official plans. They're not particularly clear because they were a photograph of a previous one. So I've used the previous one, which are maybe slightly bit clearer. So please do ignore the fixtures and fittings, which obviously the previous plan identifies, but at least you can see that layout. So what we have is a 5-bedroom HMO, as you can see here. The lounge area and kitchen are largely a connected room. They are 2 rooms, but they are largely a connected room and would function in that way. So 2 bedrooms and a shower room on the ground floor, 3 bedrooms and a bathroom on the first floor make up the accommodation provided. They're the elevations, as I say, there's no changes to that. That's what the property looks like from the rear. And that gives you a feeling of the design of the area, which is an unusual one for the more dense parts of Portsmouth that we are more used to for HMO applications. As you can see, the majority of parking is provided down on Peterborough Road section down here, and there's a long view into the site accordingly. I'll probably leave you with that floor plan. So the application meets your mixed policy at 6.06%. The sizes of the rooms are in paragraph 5.8, and as you can see, arguably a technical infringement of the living room at 10.99, thus below 11 square metres. When we look at the layout of the building, how it be used, and for the number of bedrooms proposed, officers are satisfied that this is a reasonable living environment created, and are happy to recommend it for approval. I believe we have 3 objectors in deputation and the applicant.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, so 4 minutes each. I don't know how you're going to divide that up and make that work, but 12 minutes in total.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak on this. My name is Samuel. I'm from 8 Dersingham Close, so I live next door. And I'd like to object on a number of grounds, specifically the first one that I hope all of the councillors have read the letters of disapproval from the local residents. I myself have gone around and spoken to all of the local residents. I'd like to remind people, one of the concerns obviously being parking, is that the road that the close is built onto is a one-way street with parking only allowed on one side of the road, and the bays that serve the close itself are already under the requirement as laid out by the council for the amount of cars and parking spots which should be provided. Between the time of purchase of the property and this application, there's also been the building of a special needs school for kids with disabilities, which is only within 400 metres of the application. And obviously it's a worry and a concern that with more noise and potentially more rowdy neighbours that this could cause harm. Speaking on a more personal note, I suffer with ME. My mother unfortunately has cancer. And during the time that the building has been owned by Mr. Trudeau, the local GP that served us was closed down due to a lack of doctors, and her cancer diagnosis was missed as a result of this. And part of this, we were unable to get seen by doctors in our local area, and she now has to travel all the way up to Guildford for her surgeries and her scans. And of this, it's, as you can hear, emotionally worries me greatly that this is going to be an even greater strain on the local area and the local doctors and services. There are many other issues that have been raised, and I implore you to please read through all of the objections, but in a matter of time, I'll pass over to the other people. Thank you.
Oh, hi, I'm Julie. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Dersingham Close that couldn't be here. There's lots and lots of objections to this. One of the main things that bothered me was when the planning application for the HMO was put up, it was not put in a relevant place to where the HMO was going to be. It was put completely on the opposite side of the close, next to a house that had recently been bought and was being renovated. So the residents of Dersingham Close had no idea of this HMO application for quite a while. So that's one thing that I think the council should look at when they're applying for giving these documents out. The parking regulations state that 1.5 per household of 2 or 3 bedroom houses. There's 16 houses in the close, so that gives us 24 parking spaces, 25 parking spaces. If the HMO goes ahead, that would be 26, 27. As we've already said that the houses are by the QA hospital, so obviously residential parking is very difficult because you have people from the hospital. and also the new school. Also, the planning application doesn't say anything about making provision for bicycles, so that is one thing that's not in the application. I do think that the house size is a bit small for 5 residents as well, as this causes several people coming and going, extra people coming into the area. It's a very small community, it would lose its character as well. So I'll pass you over to Debbie.
Right, I do apologise because I'm really out of my comfort zone. I forgot what I was saying already. Obviously, I actually do live next to the other HMO in our close, and I have had issues before with noise, parties going on from early afternoon till 6 o'clock in the morning. This isn't only for this. Look, the lady said it's. No one puts in complaints, but it's quite intimidating when you're on your own. I'm just there with me and my daughter. And there's also been like lots of cannabis smoking, which used to go through my house. Sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Fights were breaking out. There were bags of rubbish with which thingied rats. And also, I was really intimidated at some times. And these were professional people. They were nurses, office people. They weren't people who were just on the dole or anything. They're professional people who live next door. I mean, our community is a really strong community, and the fact that we don't know anyone who's moving in next door, that they could be there a week, they can be there a month, or they can be there a couple of years. So we don't really understand who's in there. We don't know. Obviously, the parking's really horrendous. You can never park outside your house. You have to go up the road, which then again affects the residents up the road. So they're parking further away from their homes. The hospital people park there 14 hours a day because they're doing their shifts, even though it's a permanent resident. I can't think. Obviously, it is a family dwelling house that I've grew up in that house, so it's quite personal to me. So I think, anything else? Thank you, anyway.
Can we just state as well, when the house was sold, the lady that died, her family specifically asked the estate agents to make sure that the person buying the house would not convert it into an HMO. That was the family's wishes at that time. We don't know whether the estate agent passed that on to the applicant, but if they did, then we believe that's a breach of contract.
Okay, unfortunately not a matter for the planning committee, but thank you for your time today, and it's important we hear about your experiences. Some of the antisocial behaviour situations that you've explained are matters for people like environmental health and the police. And I know you have ward councillors here who I'm sure make sure that you've got all the relevant information you need. Yeah, I know that, but it's important you've got all the numbers and the emails and people to contact if you experience those things again. Okay, Mr. Landrew.
Hello, and thank you for having me today. My name is Tudor Landrew, and I'm owner of a full HMO license for 7 Dazingham Close. I have been and continue to be an NHS dentist in practice for the last 12 years within Portsmouth area. In addition, my wife works as a consultant at Portsmouth Queen Alexandra Hospital. I'm sorry to hear that our application was met with rejection, and I would like to use this opportunity to clarify why I believe that this is beneficial to the community and in particular the area. Firstly, 7 Dazingham Close was my residential property. I used to live there with my wife for a number of years, and upon leaving, I decided to keep the property, and knowing the housing problems in the area, and convert it into an HMO. The need for housing in the area has increased significantly in the recent years, and Queen Alexandra Hospital has experienced fast expansion. At Queen Alexandra Hospital, there are currently approximately 8,000 staff members, 700 volunteers, or over 200 military personnel. In addition, the hospital plans to expand even further in the coming years to reduce waiting times, which I'm sure we can all agree must be reduced. A new physiotherapy department and occupational therapy department have been constructed in response to the hospital's ongoing growth to meet demand. Why does this matter? Well, the hospital staffing levels will need to be greatly increased in order to accommodate these critically required new facilities. And as a result, I think that this requirement will also need the construction of new housing near the hospital. This could take a variety of forms, but in my opinion, it will mostly consist of professional single rooms for those who, as the government has said, might be professionals from overseas. In addition, parking in and around the hospital complex is in high demand. In my perspective, housing near the hospital would reduce parking problems and the traffic, especially in the area where there are already more road construction projects underway, as well as the carbon imprint that motor vehicles leave behind. There are currently 5 single rooms on 7 Dersingham Close property, and all our tenants are hospital employees. My only intention in offering this HMO is to cater to professionals who are near the hospital, so they could deliver the necessary care that our community demands. And I would like to mention that none of the tenants own any cars. They're simply nurses minding their own business at the hospital. I therefore ask you to consider my HMO application for, the greater good of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leandro. Okay, members, questions? Comments? I think I touched on some of these things are not for planning committee to consider, and I'm sure your ward councillors will make sure you've got all the information you need to report some of the behaviour and experience. And it's really important you report either antisocial behaviour, noise, and criminality. I fear that that we must move the officer's recommendation for this application. Councillor Hunt.
Despite what residents might think, there is absolutely nothing that we can do. In this case, we're literally a rubber stamp, not a laughing stock, a rubber stamp for government policy. And the officers have checked it all over. Everything meets the appropriate standards. The officers double-checked that it's 6.6%, not 10%, as some people say. On the parking, we know we're under hiding to nothing if we object to things on parking grounds, so we have no alternative at all. I will move on. I think residents just need to know that we have looked at it, we've understood it, so they don't go away feeling that we have not at least listened. So yes, I second the proposal by yourself, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, this area, because I'm representing the area, and especially Wimbering, that part of Wimbering is very near to the quayway, so parking is a huge problem already. And I think I do visit that area almost on weekly basis. And the main issue is parking, because quayway is too near and they do park their cars. And although it is a residential parking area, permit holder, but still, that is the main issue we got there as a ward councillor. GP surgeries means overall in Cowsham we already lost one, and we are under pressure for that. So that I think antisocial behaviour, yes, in Cowsham we already struggling. That most probably will increase, and obviously there is no condition to say that can be only given to QA staff. So anybody can come and can get a room or whatever. Refuse and recycled material, that will be another issue, because in one house you got a family, but you will have about 5 or 7 people there. So I think that is more important to be looked into. Thank you.
Are you proposing a motion to refuse?
Yes, I will.
Okay, that's where you're going. Okay, all right, okay. Judith?
I'd like to propose that we limit the number of residents to 5, because at the moment it doesn't have a number on it, even though there are 5 bedrooms, and then I would be happy to propose that we approved it with slightly heavy heart, but Councillor Hunt has explained the situation.
Indeed.
Chairman, just to provide the advice, as always, certainly if one of these rooms was to be used as a double bedroom, indeed if a couple of them were, the standard living environment would still be, in our judgment as officers, reasonable. So we don't feel such a condition passes that test of reasonableness, nor does it pass the test of necessity, as perhaps a housing licensing for HMOs is the better place to control such occupancy. But as always, members, the judgment is yours to make if you do wish to impose such a condition.
I understand that advice, but I think in this situation, when they're all using shared bathrooms and so forth, it's even more important. Thank you.
I mean, Chair, if I may, I would have moved the officer's report, but for the sake of unanimity, I'll be content to go along with that.
We'll add the condition, as long as people are happy with that. But what we don't have is a seconder for Councillor Shah's proposal at the moment. Councillor Vallely has seconded. All right. In terms of the condition, do I have to vote? Okay, is there anything else? And we'll have to come up with some wording for that, but we're going to do the officer's recommendations first, with the condition.
Yes, so the first motion to attain a seconding was the amended motion, which is the officer's report, plus a condition limiting occupation to 5 residents of the HMO.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to hear Councillor Shah's proposition. God, I might change my mind. Seconded by Councillor Vallely. What are the grounds for the proposition? I don't know what they are yet, Kieran.
So that's a fair point. I was caught a little bit by surprise by the motion at the end. The notes I've got are from Councillor Shard speaking was that it's the parking from Queen Alexandra Hospital is the main local issue. GP services are under pressure and there's no condition for QA staff only. And then you proposed a motion to refuse. Could you give me a bit more detail on what the planning reasons for refusing would be in your view?
Actually, I already mentioned about the parking. This is a unique area which got already parking issues from the staff. And obviously we got, in addition to that, we got now school as well, women's school. So that is, the area is already under pressure for parking. That will be my main concern.
So that's an amenity-driven concern in relation to the lack of local parking. Okay, in which case I'd invite Ian Maguire to speak around the policy again.
If I should you request it, Chairman, I'm mindful that depending on where the vote on the first motion goes, it might be further debate is needed. Yeah.
I was going to say, so, I mean, Lee, you wanted to hear a bit more information from Councillor Shah. Is that satisfied your
Well, I don't know, because because I'd like to understand, I haven't really had it teased out, I'd like to understand what the impact on additional parking might be over and above. I heard one of the ladies behind describe it, but I have not yet heard it from anyone else saying it would be half a car or a whole car or whatever, because it is tight there. I've just looked at it online.
Sure, do you want to have another go? See if you can satisfy Councillor Hunt's need to tease it out.
Well, I'd like to know from the officers what it is over and above the current number of car parking required by the City Council's policies compared to the new proposition.
Chair, if I help on that, I think
Have you got some information?
I think we are well clear that parking per se cannot be the reason for doing it, because if you come down to the south of Portsmouth, we know all about the pressures on parking, and I understand that QA generates its own, but this is something universal across the city. The only reason that I could see that this might have some legs is because the nature of the close and the smaller number of spaces therefore available, and I think that's what Councillor Hunt was looking to get some data on. I have to say that I probably won't be supporting it, but I think that would help Councillor Shah put his proposal on the table.
Yes, I've noticed, I beg your pardon, I took the opportunity to look online. I noticed the cars park straight up, not alongside the curb, but they park like soldiers, as it were, from what I've seen.
Okay.
So it's quite tightly packed.
Thank you. Councillor Shah, if you could turn your microphone off, that would be
Yes.
helpful.
Yes, so from a parking standards point of view, noting, of course, that the parking standards are a relatively aged document, but your requirements for residential parking for a 2 or 3 bedroom house, and this would be a 3-bedroom house at the moment, is a 1.5 spaces for that dwelling, and your parking standard for a house of multiple occupancy with a mixed use of C3, C4, which is being sought, is the same 1.5 spaces for the dwelling, which is why our recommendation is always that this is an adequate, they'll have no likely increase in parking demand. That is just a planning by numbers, which I've obviously many times advised you not to look at. It's the individual nuances of individual sites that must be put out. But to give you the broader discussion, if you want it, those parking standards are obviously a product of the last published detailed census work. We're still waiting for the most recent census data to be published. That's been moved back, unfortunately, where it did highlight that there really wasn't notable difference from the census-derived understanding of occupancy for car usage between HMOs and 2- and 3-bed houses. So that's where that comes from. Obviously, that will be reviewed as part of a review of your parking standards under your parking strategy following the local plan over the next couple of years as those details come out from census, and indeed also influenced by your own judgments associated with whether you wish to support or discourage the use of private car through the provision of on-site or near-site parking.
Yeah, that settles it for me then, because I want to see if there was an increase. The officers say 1.5 for 1.5. So really and truly, we have to base it on evidence, and that's the evidence we've been given. And we can't go on gut feelings, unfortunately, that there might be something else happening, but we go on the evidence. So
Okay,
I stick with what I've done.
Thank you. Councillor Shah, did you want
Yeah,
to...
just I wanted to comment actually on my colleague. In regards to the public transport, when you compare north of the city with the south, that is totally different. So if we would have public transport like the south, then obviously we would be in a better position.
Okay, thank you. All right, okay, look, we need to make some progress. So the motion before us, unless anybody's got anything else last minute, is the officer's recommendations with the conditions that are in the report, plus the additional condition to limit to 5 people. Those in favour, please indicate.
5 in favour.
Against?
2 against. That's all of you, isn't it? Okay. So the motion to pass so planning permission is granted according to the officer's recommendation, plus the additional condition limiting to 5 residents of the HMO.
Thank you, Kieran. Okay, Chichester Road, thank you.
117 Chichester Road. This is an application for the change of use, again, of a use class C3 dwelling to either a C3 or C4 flexible permission. There's the property south side of Chichester Road. You can see there. Zoomed in for it, as you can see, there is a rear extension under development proposed. Proposal is to have cycle store to the rear, bin storage to the front. There is your count. This is the 4th HMO out of 62 within the 50-metre variance. I would just add that a number of local residents did raise concerns with other HMOs and unofficial HMOs, ones that perhaps hadn't been identified. Many of those other HMOs were beyond the 50-metre proximity, or indeed weren't HMOs. They had been fully investigated and were either, in one case was 2 flats, and in other cases were just simply dwellings, perhaps with different movement patterns associated with them. The application, there are the existing floor plans, the fairly normal changes we now see for HMOs, large rear dormer windows and a 3-metre rear extension. I think in this case we have an extra study, which seems to have an ensuite large toilet and an extra lounge next to a large cupboard for this application, which members could be forgiven to have suspicions about. But we must assess this application in front of us as a 6-bed HMO. All of the rooms meet and exceed, in fact, the room sizes, some of them quite comfortably, and there's a combined living space of 23.66, even if one was to exclude the study space, which obviously would provide additional amenity on these floor plans. The application complies, therefore, with your policy and is recommended for approval. I have, and to preempt maybe a question from Councillor Hunt that I think he was starting to discuss earlier, as I say, there were a number of a list of application sites, or list of, property sites provided by residents they felt were unidentified HMOs. We have satisfied ourselves that they are all not HMOs, and consequently that 6.4% is the correct figure. But even if the 2 properties which we have no record of being HMOs are down at council tax as C3 dwellings have, since that council tax was registered or since our offices visited, become HMOs, those additional 2 would nevertheless still keep it below 10%. Those 2 obviously would be unauthorised and potentially subject to enforcement action, but even if they were to come in, as I say, we're still below 10% at 9.7%. So we are satisfied that the approval here has no risk of imbalancing the community by creating this additional HMO.
Okay, Mr. Hill, 6 minutes.
Thank you again for providing the opportunity to give this deputation today. As a lot of what I've said in my previous deputation still stands, but ultimately we convert properties into high quality HMOs that are highly desirable for the people of this city that desire to rent a room. The building regs application for this one's been acknowledged by Building Control on the 1st of August 2023. The application number is PF/23/1381. There is one inaccuracy or a nuance of the application which concerns the fact there's rear access to 170 Chichester Road. So the planning officer has said that there is a fire risk because of the study being behind a high risk fire area, which is the kitchen. As you will probably all well know from a significant number of previous applications, it's always been determined that if there is rear access to the property through an alleyway or whatever it might be, and that there is access and egress out of the property through a window or door, that ultimately that's fully acceptable for there to be a room behind the high-risk fire area, which is the kitchen. So whilst it's a study, it has been mentioned on the report. Obviously, planning officers are completely human. They do a brilliant job overall. So, it's just one of those things that's been missed, but I just wanted to point it out because I don't want that to become an issue. As a business and individuals, as I've said previously, we're extremely passionate about providing high quality living accommodation. I note that a lot of the objections surround the fact that there was supposedly an additional number of HMOs that were not on the register, but that's been proven to not be the case. That wouldn't have taken over the maximum percentage anyway, so theoretically there could be an additional 2 HMOs still within this 50-metre radius. Again, I'd point out, as I said earlier, that the HMO licensing and planning application legislation in Portsmouth is already some of the strongest in the country, particularly in the locality. Every single one of the bedrooms, rooms, communal areas, en-suites, etc. is all fully compliant with the planning policy and all of the PCSs that are relevant. One of the points that was raised was about the head height for the front bedroom on the top floor. We do what's called a floor drop in the property, so ultimately we lower the ceiling on the first floor, i.e. the floor of the top floor, in order to add additional floor area to, or additional head height, to the loft area. Now, ultimately, we do that anyway, but because these are Victorian houses with significantly higher ceilings than 2.3, which is the minimum you require, then ultimately we can achieve a lot more head height on the top floor. So in order to achieve the head height that we need to have 75% 2.3 metres over the 10 square square metres of the front bedroom, we would just drop the floor, which is what we do anyway. So I would have thought that would be a consideration for building control rather than planning, but just thought I'd address it. And as I said, building control already happy with all of these bits. I just wanted to point out as well, as I said previously, right now in Portsmouth there's over 70 houses available on Rightmove. That's just 3-bedroom houses, not 2s or 4s, and there's only 16 rooms. I think you'll probably find a significant number of those rooms are in the same house, so ultimately it probably equates to something like 2 or 3 houses of rooms that are available. So there's an awful lot of family houses but not many rooms, which is why we see a significant increase of rents over the last 2 years in HMO rooms, not driven by us but purely driven by economics. As I said earlier, waste management wise, we provide 2 larger waste and recycling bins, 4 bins in total, that we ensure there's adequate storage and removal of waste. We have a cleaner on site on a weekly basis. We hold a waste carrier's licence so we can get rid of any of overspill. From a sewerage perspective, we upgrade all of the soil stack and waste pipework within the property's boundary. We also jet the drains before we hand over. Robert Neve, the council's transport expert, stated, given the small scale of the development, I'm satisfied the proposal would not have a material impact on the function of the local highway network, contrary to paragraph 111 of the NPPF 2023, and also says Portsmouth City Council Standards SPD sets out the off-road parking facilities for new developments and requires 2 off-road spaces for Class C4 HMOs. However, it is noted that the similar level basically for C3 dwelling houses with 3 bedrooms. It's not therefore considered to be a material difference. HMO tenants are a significant part of our community. As I've already said, the average age of a person on Portsea Island or in the city is around 34. The average age of our tenants is around early 30s. We use a hard-wearing floor on the ground floor, which is durable. So obviously in terms of bike storage and that side of things, we've already submitted the bike storage proposition that we have. We provide a weekly cleaner who obviously cleans those floors, but we use a hard-wearing floor so that it's really durable for getting bikes through the property. We now have plaques outside our property so that neighbours can quickly report any problems and we can solve them quickly. We also have a 24-hour notification system for tenants to notify with any problems. We use the DAB tank, which is the water storage tank. We use the hot water storage tank. We upgrade every single wire in the property in terms of electrical, so everything is rewired. All of the plumbing is redone. We spend a significant amount of money on these houses to make sure that they are some of the best, most usable, most aesthetically pleasing, and also most future-proof properties that there can be. I've got 15 seconds left, so I'd like to use that time to say thank you very much for letting me do my application. I hope you look favourably on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, comments? I think we're going to move to comments.
Move the officer's report.
Councillor Candlish, if we could use your microphone so we can all hear.
Seconded.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Those in favour, please indicate.
That's unanimous approval of the planning application in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Kieran. Gladys Avenue.
'93 Gladys Avenue, this is the change of use of use class C3 dwelling into a 7-person HMO. There it is. At the end of terrace before there's a change in the building designs going further down the road. This is the second HMO within the 50-metre area, so the second within 60 HMOs described. That would give you a 6.6% mix, which obviously is well within the 10% allowance. The room standards are all laid out in the paragraph 8.10, all comfortably meet the minimum standards and has a generous communal kitchen dining area as well to provide for residents, and consequently the application is considered to be entirely compliant with policy. I would just add, because I haven't specifically pointed it out to members, but I can see members are fully aware that we have circulated supplementary matters paper, which has had, there's no particularly novel matters within it, but just to highlight that for members, obviously Councillor Weems did make an additional written statement, which reiterated the concerns he's had for this and 2 other applications, which I know members will have already read, but just to make sure that is noted in the minutes as well as we go forward, that SMAT has no changes to the recommendations, conditions or other matters. Happy to take any questions should members have them.
Thank you. Mr Hill.
Outside of my 6 minutes, I haven't actually seen the SMAT, so could I have 10 seconds to look at the SMAT, please? Fine, all good, thanks. So, 93 Gladys Avenue already has the majority of the work's been completed. It's a huge property, which in my opinion is absolutely perfect for it to be one of our high quality HMOs. You'll notice that this is a sui generis application, so already has planning for it to be a C4, i.e. it can be a 6-bed. We're literally just asking for 1 more bedroom at this stage. All of the works complies with building regulations, and that's our intention, is to make sure the property fully complies with building regulations at every stage, which obviously a matter would be dealt with by them. I haven't pointed out in the other applications that we do have to have a fire risk assessment carried out on all of these properties, so there's quite a lot of legislation that we have to comply with and keep up to date with, which we do so. Again, below the maximum percentage of HMOs in the area, not that that's necessarily a consideration here, because ultimately we already have planning to make it a 6. We're simply adding 1 bedroom, so the fallback position would be we'd use it as a 6 rather than a 7 bedroom. We're below the maximum percentage. All of the rooms are above the minimum size standard. In fact, this house has some really big bedrooms in it, which is super desirable from a tenant's perspective. A number of the rooms are sort of 12.5 metres squared. Communal area is 33 square metres, which is 150% of the area that's required. All of the bathrooms are above 2.74, some of them are 3.5 metres. We also have a ground floor toilet as well. All of the sewerage is upgraded, all of the waste is upgraded, all the electrics are upgraded, the fire alarm system's implemented. Again, happy with the nitrate section 111 agreement that we would have to do in terms of Solent special protection. I would ask you to look favourably on this application to provide a high quality property. I don't think there's anything contentious at all about the property. We've got a really good sized garden. There was an existing shed. There is also rear access to the property, so you can easily wheel bikes along, and the access is just a little bit further down the road. Yeah, this is a really good quality property, and I hope you look favourably on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, I shall move the officer's recommendation.
Chairman, apologies for a point of clarification. Just to correct the deputy, the application site doesn't have plan permission to be a use class C4. So there is a live application which hasn't yet been determined, but this application has come first. So obviously that will be determined in due course. So the agent has advised us they intend to withdraw that application, subject to obviously today's decision.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I shall move the officer's recommendations. Would anybody like to second? I think Councillor Candlish.
Seconded.
First. Okay, is there anything else from anybody else? Okay, those in favour of moving the officer's recommendations with the conditions as set out?
That's unanimous approval in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Kieran, and I think that concludes our business today. I shall thank you for your time. How long have we been going? Quite a while. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. And I'll close the meeting at 14:31.